people talk about this person. You know, we've had our own killers in the area, serial killers, if you will, but there's one that really stands out amongst the crowd because the way he killed and how he did it sort of symbolizes Los Angeles in a weird way. And that killer is the Night Stalker, Richard Ramirez. Thank you. And it's you. For this, I ended up reading Richard Carlo's The Night Stalker, Life and Crimes of Richard Ramirez. I'm going to read this thing I read about downtown LA. He passed broken down hookers with no teeth and black eyes and tattooed junkies who were rail thin and lost in a haze of heroin. He passed cokeheads whose eyes were bugging out of their faces, their movements erratic, their mouth working away aimlessly, foaming. There were bars that smelled like stale whiskey and dirty bodies.
I've been there.
Laced with the sweet aroma of marijuana, filled with a distinct drone and hum of human misery and hustle. Richard walked through this jungle of degradation with quick and easy step. If any place was ever a bad influence on a boy, it was downtown Los Angeles. And this is pretty much the downtown LA of the 80s. It was so bad. It was so bad, especially Skid Row. One of his old haunts that when I read it, I'm like, oh, of course, because this place always scares me. It's the Greyhound bus terminal on 7th Street. Have you ever passed by that? It's
I have never seen that. I feel like all of downtown is a Greyhound bus terminal. So in that sense, yeah, I've been there and I rode the bus.
I've only ever passed by, but it just seems always so sketchy and dark.
Of course it is. It's a Greyhound bus terminal.
It's a Greyhound bus terminal. I remember, because I went to school outside downtown Los Angeles. They're just
show off.
Grand was like basically the only street you wanted to be on. Like I remember spring being really bad. I never went on Main. I never had a reason to go on Main. Now that everything's
you should stay on Main.
Gentrified.
Stay on Main.
Stay on Main. Hey. It's a warning.
Hey, go on, stay on Main.
Stay on Main. Please stay on Main.
But like between 7th and 8th, like that one coffee shop, just stay there.
And during the day, please God, during the day. By the time Richard Ramirez arrived to Los Angeles from El Paso in 78, a fresh 18 years old, he was already set on path of brutality. Whether he was to become the Night Stalker or just an anonymous criminal, whatever he chose to do as an outlet for all his trauma was going to be like extreme. Like it was going to be like set to 10. With many serial killers, people always ask whether their actions are a product of nature or nurture. Was it his genes or his environment to blame? It's easy to look at things like El Paso being the site where the atomic testing, so you could, maybe it's something in the air. It's easy to think of stuff like his mom, when she was pregnant with Richard, worked at a job where she was breathing in chemical fumes and she was feeling nauseated all the time, and she like had these dizzy spells. They thought that she was going to lose the baby, so they started giving her injections so she can keep it.
God.
And all this weird chemical stuff. It could be that he had seizures when he was a kid because he was epileptic. He like grew out of it, but
grow out of that?
Yeah, he had petit mal seizures, which would just be like he would just stare at something for like 10 minutes without saying anything. And then he had like epileptic fits in like class. It meant that he couldn't play football, and he was like a really energetic.
If only he had been able to play football.
He could have. Hey, listen.
He could have been OJ.
He could have been the guy who did the dog fighting.
I was trying to Vicks Vapor Rub or something. Like Michael Vicks Vapor Rub.
Don't rub it on. You'll get angry.
Don't rub it in.
He was later, like much later after like he was caught, was diagnosed with temporal lobe epilepsy, which has symptoms like he was hypersexual, he had hyper-religious feelings, hypergraphic imagination, he was overly aggressive. People who have temporal lobe epilepsy were like Van Gogh, Julius Caesar, Napoleon had this.
He's in great company.
Because of his epileptic fits, he like lost a lot of opportunities. A lot of people, like the football thing was something his sister brought up, because it was like
a sister.
He's one of 5 kids, 3 brothers, a sister, and him. He's the youngest of the 5. But that's all nature, genetic stuff that could be. Other than those somewhat genetic maladies, Richard Ramirez was inadvertently raised to become the Night Stalker. Let's look at his MO first. Let's talk about what we know the Night Stalker as. Night Stalker prowled the greater Los Angeles area in the late hours of the night, driving stolen cars to seemingly random houses. He'd park in ways that made getaways easy. He would sneak into homes with great ease. Like, it was so easy for him to do this. Many to this day blame the brutal summer of 1985, which at the time was the hottest summer on record. 1985. I think we brought that up in something. They blame that summer for all the open windows. A lot of people still talk about that. Everyone had windows open. Everyone had screen doors locked, but just
an air conditioner. What's wrong with you people? What, with things expensive in the 80s? Was there some sort of recession in the 80s?
They spent all the money they were still trying to recover from disco. You know how much money we had to spend on disco?
They spent too much money on geometric shapes. There was no left in the budget for air conditioning.
You know how expensive all that neon stuff was? And we had to have neon.
All the chemicals were in the neon signs.
Everyone was getting sick. Yeah, so there's all these open windows, but from my readings, he like didn't just pop into any windows. Like, he still had to take screen doors off. If breaking into homes was an Olympic sport, Richard Ramirez would be on like a Wheaties box.
Like OJ.
Just like OJ. He handled window screens like they were nothing. He could slip into like really tall windows and like throw his 6-foot body into it. Nobody would hear anything. Like, he was completely silent. He was a prowler. Before anything else, he was a prowler. He picked locks like they were nothing. He reached into doggy doors and unlocked the doors. He climbed trees. He climbed walls. All of this without, like I said, making a sound. Many times before entering a home, he'd ask Satan to watch his actions because this was going to be an offering to him because he was a Satan worshiper. Once when he was in a home, he'd like stand completely still for a minute and let his eyes adjust to the dark.
Oh, God.
So can you just imagine a guy just standing in your kitchen just waiting until he could see everything?
And you just see like the faint glow if you see him. Just like, what is that?
Yeah, what's that? What's that shimmering? Oh, it's a knife. He used a pin light to get around, which is...
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
I use that sometimes when I'm on the prowl.
He mostly operated with a 22 pistol. Sometimes he used a 25 later in this whole thing. He snuck around.
Shoot people?
He'd do all kinds of stuff. We'll get into it. If he saw a woman and a man, he'd usually put the gun to a spot around the ear and fire. The 22 bullet scrambles the brain, like it goes, like there's no chance of survival. Like some people can get shot in the brain and they live.
Wait, why only if it's a man and a woman?
There was something that he was interested in the women that he was not interested in the men for.
Their compassion and understanding?
Just tips on painting nails. The women were rarely let off that lucky. The Night Stalker was a vicious rapist and sodomizer, and he would bind women up, punch them, rape them multiple times throughout his stay in someone's home, burglarize and ransack their home, eat their food, drink their soda. If the women were older, chew their gum. If the women were older, he'd usually kill them afterwards. If they were younger and attractive, he'd let them live, often attempting to be tender with them. I don't know why he did that. I was reading it, like if someone was attractive, he didn't like...
why?
No interest. One woman says that the Night Stalker, after raping and abusing her, told her that she wasn't bad for an older woman. She thanked him out of compulsive politeness. Just like, thanks. After attacking one woman, he asked for directions back to the 5 freeway. He was in Burbank and he thought it was in Glendale. If you did what he said and didn't fight and gave him the sexual dominance and pain he sought, he let you live. That seemed to be the biggest draw to that. If you resisted, he either shot you or stabbed you. One woman managed to pull a shotgun on him when he was ransacking her home. She pulled the trigger and there was no bullets inside, so he shot her. He stabbed her fiercely in the chest and then he cut her eyes out.
Okay.
He took them back to the Cecil Towel with him as his bounty.
The eyes?
The eyes.
Oh,
Brown
no.
eyes he took back to the Cecil with him.
Oh, God.
Some people claim that many saw him just dumping his bloody clothes in a dumpster at the end of the evening and going back to the back entrance of the Cecil. He was so comfortable at the Cecil that...
There's a back entrance.
There's a back... Oh, no. God, that back entrance has some stories.
Hellspawn can spew out from 2 sides of it and the windows.
He was so comfortable at the Cecil that dumping evidence was just like taking out kitchen trash. Like, okay.
Hey, Richard.
Another one? What can I say?
Hey, it's Saturday, isn't it? Hail Satan.
Hey, hail Satan.
All right, you crazy.
Crazy kids. I'll never understand you. In many of these cases, he raped and killed elderly or invalid women, sometimes after they were dead. He stole VCRs, jewelry, cash, anything of value, and he would take this blood-stained stuff to a house in Echo Park and trade it for drug money.
Really? I think I know whose house that is.
It's very close. I'm like, I know that street name. I'm like, oh
God. That's where I get my blood money.
The need for drug money fueled this. What fueled him and kept him going was heavy metal music. At one crime scene early on, he left his AC/DC hat. When he was eventually caught and awaited questioning, he was apparently humming the song Night Prowler by AC/DC. The fact that anyone considers AC/DC heavy metal is just... He also let his victims know that he was a big worshiper of Satan. When people would beg him to believe that they didn't have anything more worth stealing, and they would say, like, I swear to God, he'd like, no, swear to Satan.
Oh, no.
Dweeb.
Yeah. He saw Batman too soon.
Him praying to Satan before he entered the house was kind of like, you're a dweeb.
Yeah.
He drew pentagrams on the walls with lipstick. In one case, he drew it on a dying woman's thigh. Everything he did was dressed completely in black. He had rotten teeth. His skin smelled like leather. And he had apparently the eyes of a rabid animal.
I guess all of our skin smells like leather in a sense.
Yeah, but, you know, I'd wash. I don't think he'd wash.
You're not supposed to wash leather.
Oh, no.
Oh, Greg, your face just fell off.
Now to bring up the idea of nature versus nurture again. Despite there being natural problems with Richard Ramirez, he was otherwise a good kid. The youngest of 5, 2 hardworking parents. His father was distant. He had a bad temper, but they were like religious, somewhat over-religious.
So he must be great.
Yeah, right?
God is great.
Satan is great. Father, Satan is great. His father was a disciplinarian, but overall, he just wanted his boys and one daughter.
What church is that?
Church of Discipline, which is all of them, and you would know that if you ever went. But no, I got something to do on Sunday.
I've got Super Bowls to watch. It's the big Super Bowl. The hockey's playing the hockey.
Hockey's playing baseball today.
It's Super Bowl Sunday every Sunday.
I've got the Super Bowl on my lap right now. Back to the Night Stalker. Richard Ramirez's dad just wanted his kids to go to college and be good at academics. None of them were. Richard was shy and tried to be good at school, but he just, as he went on further along, he just found it harder and harder. He was restless. He had a really big imagination, something of a loner when he played. He played cowboys and Indians and played both roles.
He played cowboys and Indians, and he was the cactus.
When are you guys gonna involve me? Life in El Paso was really hard, and having 4 older brothers who were wild was having their effect on Richard. He smoked pot for the first time when he was 10 years old, and he wasn't afraid of drugs or stealing. All this being said, Richard Ramirez was designed to be the Night Stalker. Every little thing that led to his success as a serial killer was in each small part thanks to the revolving door of trauma that he had to deal with. There were so many bad influences in his life, and he witnessed so many horrific things and was schooled in so many forms of crime that it was only inevitable that he became the dreaded Night Stalker. None of this is an excuse, of course, and none of it makes it okay, but reading the laundry list of things is hurtful when you think it's just happening to a child. So you're kind of like, oh, that fits, this fits. First, 2 of his older brothers were molested as kids by a school teacher who would often come around the house and pick the boys up. Sometimes this guy would even enter the home. On the topic of whether Richard was ever a victim, the brothers could only say that Richard was around at the same time his teacher was around, and when they asked Richard Ramirez, he couldn't recall anything. He was too young to recall anything. But his brothers were like, well... Another pedophile in town raped a small boy, and Richard was present when they witnessed it. He fled before he could become a victim. His father had an insane temper and would lash out at the boys, and as he got older, instead of staying at home and living in fear, he would run off to the cemetery to sleep. It was peaceful there.
What?
The abuse the boys took made most of them move out at an early age. Many of them dabbled in crime, robbing homes to support their drug habits, and after all the court cases, their father had to sell the family home after he spent most of his savings. Enter Richard's cousin Mike. To fill the void left by the absence of the cousins. When I used to read about serial killers because I used to think that I was interested, but really I'm more interested in detectives catching them. When I read about Richard Ramirez, they always bring up cousin Mike. Cousin Mike is a psycho, and the worst possible thing to happen to Richard. Cousin Mike Miguel was a decorated war hero who fought valiantly in Vietnam on paper. When Richard was hanging around Mike would tell him about his days in Vietnam and the brutality in which he operated. See, the Viet Cong believed that they couldn't ascend to heaven if they were missing limbs, so American soldiers would often cut their limbs off. There are stories of soldiers wearing necklaces with hanging Viet Cong ears. Mike would show Richard pictures of his exploits as well. In one photo, Mike has a gun to a woman's head and he's forcing her to perform fellatio on him. Great. And in the next photo, he's holding her severed head.
Okay.
Decorated war hero. That was in every American soldier.
Those are our troops.
That isn't every American soldier, but I've heard enough of this sort of thing from different wars, and I'm like, yeah, this happens. Mike taught Richard... It
happens outside of war, too.
Yeah.
Actually, it happens at the Cecil.
Mike taught Richard almost everything he knew about moving stealthily, about where to attack someone on their body, about hunting. Richard's dad took him hunting, too, and they enjoyed the sport of it, but Mike took him. He showed him how to take pleasure in killing. One night, Richard was hanging around Mike's place, and Mike's wife came home, and she complained about him not having a job and being a deadbeat, and they argued, and Mike shot his wife in the chest. Oh. Right in front of Richie. Mike told Richie to never tell anyone.
He's like horrible Forrest Gump. Like he's
trauma Forrest Gump. He taught Charles Manson how to stab by accident. So Mike told Richie to never tell anyone what he saw, and he didn't, and told him to run. Mike was arrested, but only did 4 years in a mental hospital because all he had to say was, "Oh, I have PTSD." He never saw it.
That made up thing. We don't believe that. We don't believe that's made up. Let me apologize for the apology.
Yeah. So at this point, Richard was getting into hallucinogenic drugs and began to love the idea of bondage and sex mixing together. He liked the idea of dominance. Regular sex wasn't really doing anything for him. He would visit Tijuana with his brothers and they would get prostitutes together. At an early age, his brothers taught him how to break into homes, how to scope a house out, when to break in, what areas were ideal. Later, his sister married what can only be described as a peeping Tom. He taught Richard how to cruise and stalk for women.
A peeping Tom.
He taught Richard how to sneak up on women's windows and get the most out of a peep. When Ramirez was 15, he got a job at a Holiday Inn. He somehow acquired a master's key from another employee, and ooh boy, he started by just robbing rooms and getting away with it. He knew rhythm. He knew not to just do it a bunch of times, do it, wait a long time, do it again. He would also do it at the Holiday Inn job, would look into windows and watch women undressed. One night, it became too much to bear, and while a woman was in the shower, he used the master key to let himself in. When she came out of the shower, he attacked her and attempted to rape her, but luckily, very, very luckily, her husband came back in the room and beat him to a pulp. His head was swollen large on his stupid, lanky body. He told his mom and sister that the woman had invited him in for sex and the husband had caught them, so he pretty much got away with it. The couple were from out of state and they didn't want to hang around Texas just to go to court with this thing.
An out-of-stater doesn't win in Texas court.
It's Texas. Did you bring your gun?
Remember the Alamo.
Crime and madness continued. Being brought up religious was a big deal to his family, and Richard was very spiritual, but all these rotten and natural ideas were in his head, and he never felt like a good person because he wasn't. and he started to naturally gravitate towards believing that Satan supported his decisions. What was probably crippling depression and trauma was definitely seeming like a Satan department matter to him at the time. Send that to Satan.
Care of
Satan. One of his brothers moved out to Watson. Richard would come and visit him throughout the years. He loved LA. In particular, he loved how open...
The Randy Newman songs about him.
Written from his perspective.
Here's a little number written from Richard Ramirez.
My old friend.
You got a friend in me.
He loved in particular how openly sexual things were here. Not only were there girls in bikinis...
I guess the Capitol Records building's pretty phallic.
It's so phallic. He just licked his lips and said, "Let me sit. That looks like a nice seat." He wasn't only turned on, like, there was, of course, like, Beach Boys song Girls at the Beach, which was not a Texas thing. There was also late 70s downtown Los Angeles, which was definitely an inviting place for a young man with the formula of a serial killer stewing in his brain. There were prostitutes and drugs and porn shops and porno theaters all over downtown. It was just so obvious. All of it was on display. No shrouds of secrets. It was like he was in the hell that he thought he belonged in. So in 78, at the age of 18, he moved out here and immediately was hooked on cocaine, which was the style at the time. And instead of snorting it, the Ramirez's, which were him and his brother and whoever else was around, would mainline it into their veins, which causes a much quicker high, makes the user frantic and wild. Then he gradually graduated to angel dust and PCP.
Congratulations. He finally graduated.
Here's your diploma. It's a needle.
His dad must have been so proud.
Dad, I did it.
Dad, I graduated.
Good. No follow-up questions.
Good. We're never speaking again. Bye.
He quickly learned the layout of the freeway systems, how sprawl worked. He wanted to rob houses in every community that we had here.
What a goal.
Yeah, he certainly tried. The first person he raped here was a lesbian woman he shared drugs with. He kept making passes at her, and she wouldn't allow him to advance. And about 3 a.m., they ran out of drugs, and she told him to leave. He left the room and then went out the fire escape and waited for her to fall asleep, and snuck through the window from the fire escape and attacked her.
Now, was that his first, I don't want to say successful rape, but was that the first one that, because he said the other one he got stopped.
Yeah, I think this was his first case of raping somebody.
Okay.
From this, you can see with that one, I think that he is taking his years of guidance from the bad influences and all the bad experiences he's tried to do and starting to shape his methods. Like he's starting to, okay, I'll sneak out. And like he's starting to get how you can see him building as the Night Stalker. That same week, he discovered the Satanic Bible and, of course, loved it. So much so that he journeyed to San Francisco to meet Anton LaVey, the founder of the Church of Satan.
Great.
Who was quite impressed with Ramirez, of course. He was quoted as saying, "I thought
Emperor Palpatine was impressed with Anakin." What a surprise.
What a surprise. They quoted LaVey saying, "I thought Richard was very nice, very shy, and I liked him." He would say about future serial killers, Richard Ramirez.
He's got something, that kid.
He's got a sparkle in his eye. It might be the drugs. While he was there, he had the opportunity to witness a ceremony where everyone was naked. Ramirez said he felt the touch of Satan's hand. I hope that it was trying to strengthen.
Satan.
Some people just call it an erection, psycho.
What's that?
He
Greg, what's that? Greg, tell me.
Like, I don't know.
What's that?
A secret?
It sounds funny. What is it?
Is that like a pants secret? He returned to LA completely changed, and the frenzy continued. He was no longer interested, like I said, in conventional forms of sex. Everything now was fueled by his anger and his bloodlust. His sadistic nature needed an outlet. He continued robbing houses, taking drugs, paying for sex with prostitutes. He attempted to kidnap women and rape them, failed many times at this.
Good.
He would steal cars and sleep in them. When he scored money, he would stay at many of the downtown's sleaziest motels, places like the Huntington, the Roslyn, signs still up, places still up, the Ford, the Frontier, and of course, the Cecil.
Naturally. Nice to meet you.
He reportedly stayed on the top floor. These places were no questions asked, no ID necessary, transients rooms. They went from like $8 a night to $14 a night.
It's a good deal.
This is still like that. A lot of times after he's having his killing spree, what he would do is, he'd steal a car, kill someone, abandon the car, take the bus back to the Greyhound, buy drugs, and then go back. Or sometimes he'd take the stolen items straight to Echo Park, then to the Greyhound bus terminal, and then just spend money on drugs.
All right.
He was a regular at the Greyhound terminal. He was also a regular at the Cameo Theater back in the 80s.
Oh, that's why you were asking about it the other day.
Because it used to show hardcore pornography, which
Oh.
also pleases Satan. So between 78 to 84, he becomes superb at prowling. But robbing houses is no longer doing it for him. Satan demands more. I heard a personal story from this era of Night Stalkerism from like a family friend, actually.
This story haunts my days and my nights.
Somebody I know who is equally into true crime was telling me that when she was younger, when her and her sisters were younger, she had moved out by this time. I think they were staying in Montebello, I want to say, in like an apartment complex. And somebody snuck through the window and tried to kidnap her little sister and pull her through the bathroom window, and everyone chased him off. He ran ran and jumped over a fence and left a shoe behind, and they went to the cops later and they did the lineup of suspects, and they pointed to a guy who was Richard Ramirez, but they didn't have enough to pin on him, so they had to let him go.
Did they still have the shoe?
Yeah, they kept it.
They bronzed it.
It's strange because, like, you know, LA, even yesterday I was on my porch and all I was talking about was how hot the summer was, and someone was like, you know what this
Not as hot as that.
not as hot as 85, and you know what that makes me think of? The Night Stalker, because it was so hot, but you had to close your windows because there was a killer sneaking through all the windows.
This past summer was really hot, but nothing. I wonder if anything's going to emerge like, he's back.
Yeah, that's fine. Let's talk about the spree. I try to do this as delicately as possible.
Please don't.
Please go nasty. In the summer of 1984, this is when it starts, in the Glass Owl Park area of Los Angeles, which is near Eagle Rock and Cypress Park, Ramirez finds the first victim of what would become the Night Stalker spree. I don't want to get into every gruesome detail or whatever. Out of respect to victims, I'll only get into details into the weird ones that later lead to him getting caught. June 24th, he kills Jeannie Vicow, who was 79 years old in Glass Owl Park.
79? Yeah. Jeez.
March 17th, 1985. This one's a weird one. It doesn't really follow the pattern. What happens is he's driving on the freeway and he sees an attractive woman, so he follows her home. She enters through the garage and he sneaks up completely unnoticed. This is where he dropped his AC/DC hat. Now, instead of stabbing her and trying to rape her, he charges into the garage. She turns around, and just as he's going to shoot her, the garage door closes and the lights go out. So he fires, and she holds the keys right to her face, and she hit the bullet ricochets off the keys. She falls to the ground, pretending to be dead. He goes right over her into the house. Her roommate, Dale Okazaki, this woman's name is Maria Hernandez. He walks right over Miss Hernandez, walks into the kitchen, and her roommate, Dale Okazaki, is there behind the kitchen counter. She just heard a gunshot. She looks up, Night Stalker's there, and he shoots and kills her. Robs the house, walks back over. By this time, Maria Hernandez has left the garage. She's like trying to get away, and he comes out. She's hiding behind a trash can, and he sees her, and he walks, and he doesn't do anything. He walks away. Can't figure out why.
Maybe he thought that it was a miracle that she blocked the thing.
Yeah, maybe
there was a chance for redemption in him. God does exist.
So after this,
I thought you were gonna say that the garage door fell on him like the Rancor. That's the end, right? End of the story.
Like a fat guy came out and started crying.
Cousin Mike.
He does the same thing to another car, but this woman notices that she's being followed, so she pulls up.
How do you notice you're being followed? Like I sometimes think like, am I being followed? But how do you know? Like it could.
I have no idea, but this woman figured it out. She just noticed that since the freeway in the exit and probably twists and turns, she's being followed, so she pulls over at a red light.
My better question: how do you keep yourself being detected from following somebody?
What you have to do is just get low behind the steering wheel.
Make them think a dog is driving the car.
Oh, the dog's following me. I'm okay with that. She turns around like, what are you doing? What's up? And he walks up to the car and he's like, well, I thought I recognized you. And she's like, no, you don't recognize. So he tried to pull her out of the car and she tried to get away and he shot her in the street. And there was witnesses to this.
Really?
Yeah, so it's beginning to start build. Because he left a witness already and then there's other people.
Yeah.
That was a weird one, but he shot and killed her. So there's two victims in different areas. One was in Monterey Park, the other one was in Rosemead. 10 days later in Whittier, he violently attacked and mutilated Vincent and Maxine Cesara, which is the woman who cut her eyes out. He was in the 60s, she was in her 40s. A couple months later, May 14th, in Monterey Park, he kills Bill and Lillian Doy, who were both in their 60s. On May 30th, 1985, he attacks Carol Kyle, 41, in Burbank. On June 1st, 1985, this is a really bad one. I'll let you look it up. He attacks 83-year-old Mabel Bell and her sister Florence Nettie Lang in Monrovia. This is where he leaves pentagrams. July 2nd, 1985, he attacks Mary Lou Cannon, who's 75.
Mary Lou Cannon? That sounds really familiar.
Oh, I'm sorry, Mary Louise Cannon.
Never mind.
This is a weird one. July 5th, the day after 4th of July, 1985.
Wait a minute. July 5th is after the 4th of July?
Yeah. Didn't you?
What?
I told you to study your calendar.
The 80s. What's
like
next?
I say, after disco, the world was in disarray. And they're just trying to get back into the swing of things.
That's why the swing revival happened in the 90s.
They took it too literally. We're trying to still recover from that. I mean, everyone's still combing their hair. Everyone's still saying, yeah, dog. Oh, no.
Yeah, that's swing.
What I meant to say was cool cat, but I got my animals mixed up.
Hot dog.
Hot dog. He goes to Sierra Madre, right? And there's a house. He basically walks through the door. Now he sees...
Like the thing?
Like the thing. Basically, yeah, walks through the door. Everyone is sleeping. There's a young girl who's 16 years old. Her name's Whitney Bennett. What he usually does is dispatch the entire household and then goes to the one that he wants to have sex with and has sex with them. This is is a little different. He comes in the house, scopes everybody out, goes back to his car and gets a tire iron because he's going to beat this girl to a pulp and then have sex with her. And he's going to kill everybody room by room. But he goes to the girl first and she's sleeping. He takes a tire iron, he hits her in the head. Then he tries to strangle her with the cord to a phone, which he's done before. He like electrocutes people. He has the phone cord around her neck. But he says something weird starts happening where like there's blue sparks coming out and he sees like a blue haze coming and he thinks it's God trying to intervene. So he just stops and walks away. And he's so like frazzled by this. So he walks away. The girl has no recollection of that happening and she just wakes up and her face is like beaten to a pulp and her eyes are like beaten shut and she can't figure it out.
Why couldn't he have epilepsy when he was older?
Well, imagine. Yeah, there's a guy here in his tire and he's just shaking. Okay, and then on July 7th, 1985, he attacks Joyce Lucille Nelson, who's 61 in Monterey Park. And then later that same night, hours later, he attacks Sophie Dickman, who was 63 in the same area. 13 days later, on the 20th, he attacks Max and Leah Neilding in Glendale in their 60s. Later that same night, he goes to Sun Valley and attacks the Kovanaugh family. He kills the husband and attacks the wife. Around the end of July, he attacks a couple in Northridge on Acre Street. Which is right
what street?
Acre Street, which is right off of Parthenia, I think by Skateland.
Oh no, not Skateland.
But the couple manages to fight him off.
Oh, see? The proud residents of Northridge.
He came out to this area because it was so far away from the east side, which he'd been attacking primarily, that he wanted like he wanted to scare everybody up.
He wanted to eat at Brent's.
He kept hearing about it.
Their corned beef.
Which he was muttering the entire time. The corned beef!
Satan, corned beef.
Satan, corned beef. So he tries to attack Virginia and Chris Peterson in Northridge, who were sleeping in their home, but she is a light sleeper, so she heard him cock the gun, and she woke up, and she's like, what are you doing here? And he shot her right under the right eye, but it only rocked her, it didn't kill her.
It rocked her?
Yeah, it knocked her against the wall, and she asked, what is this, a joke? Then
wait a minute, she got shot under the eye and said, what is this, a joke?
I'll explain this.
Okay.
So her husband, Chris, charged at him, and Ramirez shot him in the right temple, knocking him back.
Well, everyone in Northridge is immortal, I know that.
Where Mike Piazza was born. But not killing him.
What?
So he lunged at him, and the two men grappled, and Ramirez left to the car, first to get more bullets, and then he figured the cops were coming, so he bailed. The explanation for this? Old ammunition. The gunpowder had lost its potency and it couldn't penetrate the skull. Virginia's shot went through the roof of her mouth, down her throat, and out the back of her neck, missing her brain entirely.
And she still said...
And she was in a lot of pain, yeah, but she was like, what is this, a joke? Like, what are you trying to do, kid? The bullets are small, so it hits a point that's not going to harm anything. I'm sure, like, the adrenaline and the shock.
Yeah, I guess you wouldn't cry until it was over. Yeah.
His final killing in our area happens on August 8th, the Abawaths in Diamond Bar. After this, the heat was really on him. There were too many witnesses left alive, and now there was an $80,000 reward on him. He knew people around the Greyhound terminal wouldn't hesitate to turn him in, but he was wrong. They did hesitate, but then they did it anyways. That was one of the three things that ended up giving up his identity to police, was one of the people at the Greyhound terminal. All he's leaving at the scene of the crime, really, that they can really put on him is a shoe print, a size 11 or 11 and a half, a Via brand shoe print. It's always underneath a window. In some cases, it's bloody and on a blanket or on the carpet. In one case, it's on someone's face. That's how they know him. He has big feet and he's wearing these Via shoes. They tracked it down.
Why are you looking at my feet?
Where were you last night?
Diamond Bar.
Uh-huh. What time?
All hours.
I live there and everywhere else that people are getting attacked. So they have the shoe prints. They have the shell casing, which is a 22, sometimes it's a 25. They have descriptions because he leaves people alive. They all describe him: rabbit eyes, bad teeth. What they have on him is teeth.
I want.
That's what they got on.
Ooh, you're turning me on. Teeth and feet. I'm a teeth and feet kind of guy.
Double E kind of guy.
I wanted to see how gross his teeth really are.
I'll show you. You want to see a picture right now?
Nah.
Let me show you a picture.
Okay. Greg's just smiling at me. That's what it is.
Winking.
I haven't flossed in 20 years. Oh.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Don't worry, I'll put this
He's
up.
got Klaus Kinski teeth.
It's Klaus Kinski. You can only be alliterative names to do the nice stuff. So that's his teeth.
And that's his teeth, folks.
So after the Abawath thing, the heat's on, so he steals a car and heads to San Francisco until the heat dies down. When he's there, he kills a random old woman in Chinatown, and he ends up staying in the Tenderloin district,
Oh no.
which is just quite scummy. On August 17th, while he's in Merced, he kills a man named Peter Pan and attacks his wife Barbara.
Not Barbara Pan. Barbara Pan. Her? The man who killed Peter Pan.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. He does look like Hook.
He does look like Hook, you're right.
He's afraid of ticking clocks.
The ticking clock, which is the police. After that attack and robbery, he left a pentagram on the wall. San Francisco Police Department, they put out a press conference, and without the go-ahead from LAPD or LASD, which is the Sheriff's Department, they released detailed information about the attacks at both Northern and Southern California, which the task force was pissed about. And sure enough, Ramirez dumps his size 11 Avias and his gun over the Golden Gate Bridge to the ocean. Now the ocean's the killer.
The Bay did it.
And then he heads west to Arizona to see his brother. With increasing awareness of the Night Stalker, the entire Los Angeles area was gripped with terror. The sale of guns, window bars, guard dogs, alarm systems went up. If you were a locksmith during this reign of terror in 1985,
business is good.
Gold rush.
The second California gold rush. He restarted the economy in the 80s.
Thank you, Richard Ramirez. His goal, and yes, he had a goal, was to steal enough money to be able to buy a house and use it as a torture house.
Oh,
similar
God.
to H. Holmes. I know.
Wait, is H.H. Holmes the guy that Wolf in the White City or whatever it is?
Yeah, the Devil in the White City.
Devil in the White City.
H. Holmes, the guy who attacked people during the World's Fair. That's what he wanted to do.
Yeah, in reading my stuff also, the guy I'm about to talk to, they kept bringing it up like, kind of like H.H. Holmes. And I was like, oh, I don't want to hear about him.
He did kind of set the bar pretty high.
Yeah. The Diamond Bar.
This is really creeped me out. He wanted to videotape his conquests and sell them because there's apparently a big market for that. God damn it.
Skid Row.
But that would have really defeated what his true calling was, though, prowling. Except in one instance, early summer of 1985, when he tried to break into a home of a deputy sheriff, not knowing it. He tried popping open a small window, but the window had been painted over, so he had to break the seal. So when he did, the deputy's wife woke up and asked if her husband knew what the noise was. So Ramirez fled, but not before leaving his signature clue, that one big Avia shoe print.
Why just one? Is he one-footed? Is that like, have you been burying the lead this whole time?
No, he's one-footed.
He's also kind of like that worm from Richard Scarry's World.
Why is no one asking the real question? Where's this other guy's foot?
When is the other shoe gonna drop?
He didn't buy it. It was both feet. All right, it was both feet.
Thank you.
Shoe prints. But luckily, the deputy sheriff...
It was one foot because Satan was carrying him all along.
I'm your single wheelchair. I'm your rollerblade.
Go to Skateland. I'm scared because around this... No, I wasn't around then, but I was in Skateland like a decade later.
I don't think I had any interest in you.
I'm really young. My neck's really tight.
The deputy sheriff noticed what happened. He contacted guys who were... I'll get to the guys who were in charge of the task force. He contacted them and said, I think I got it. Ramirez's hero, other than Satan and whoever the singer for AC/DC was Jack the Ripper.
Oh, no. Didn't he sing for AC/DC?
Yeah, Jack the Ripper. Oh, my God.
He's the one in the little boy shorts.
That's why he dressed like a schoolboy. This was not planned, I'm sure, but Jack the Ripper's last killing, the most brutal of them, happened because, well, most of the killings...
In Diamond Bar.
He made it out here. Good for him. Well, most of Jack the Ripper's killings happened out in the street. His last murder, the murder of Mary Jean Calley, happened within her own home, so the Ripper took his time with the privacy of her home to mutilate her. This was the way the Night Stalker worked. That was a weird coincidence. Now on the case, almost from the beginning, were Detective Frank Salerno, who a few years back...
Sir,
was the lead detective in the Hillside Strangler case. He was actually one of the...
This is like a companion murder, though.
It kind of is, yeah. He's actually the one who solved it. He was already seen as a hero. The overtime hours from that case afforded him a swimming pool.
Good for him.
Good for him. He deserved it.
A swimming pool filled with gold.
Filled with applause. Also working beside him was diligent detective Gil Carrillo.
Sergeant Diligent.
Sergeant Diligent.
Detective Determination.
Carrillo was vital in identifying who the Night Stalker was. Looks like a really nice guy.
Yeah.
If I'm going to name the victim...
Let's see his teeth.
Oh, he just doesn't brush. If I'm going to name the victims, I should also name the task force assigned to his capture. Once they figured out that one guy was committing all these crimes... By the way, when Carrillo pitched the idea that there was one guy doing all this, they laughed at him. They're like, what are you talking about? That's how insane and out of the ordinary these crimes were for one person to commit. Because they were all over the area. They barely fit any kind of pattern.
How many were there?
He was charged with 13 murders.
Okay.
And I think like way more things that he did within a home that racked up.
He was charged with bad taste for his AC/DC hat. He went to fashion court for that one.
He went to rock and roll court for that one. Welcome to rock and roll court.
I'll shred for Judge Flying V.
Everything's out of order there.
Out of order. This whole courtroom's in order.
Task force comprised of Salerno in the lead, Carrillo at his side along with J.D. Smith, Russ Uloth, Jim Mercer, Bobby Glenn, and John Yarbaum.
Okay.
Guys in charge of catching the Night Stalker. Catching the killer was going to be incredibly difficult because there was so little on him. All they had was bad teeth, everything they learned from the victims. They had shoe prints. No DNA was left behind. Even though he did leave DNA behind. He urinated in the toilet once and didn't flush. toothbrush. He drank a Mountain Dew and left it. He spit up melon seeds on the floor. There was no fingerprints, no blood.
What? He spit up melon seeds. I guess, he was eating people's stuff.
Yeah, he was eating people's stuff.
But not the melons.
In the book, they have a picture of a melon half eaten, and it really grossed me out. I don't know why that grossed me. Like, of everything. Well, they don't have graphic pictures. That was probably the most graphic picture they had.
Bitten into melon. That wasn't a melon.
You had no idea where he's going to strike next. The houses seemed like they were random, but he, like, knew how to prowl for houses. But from the reading, he would drive, like, that one, and then he would terrorize people. It's so scary to think about. Sometimes he would leave no shoe prints, no bullet casings, but Detective Salerno and Carrillo just had a gut feeling about this guy. They, like, saw his pattern, so they entered a house. Even if it was completely different, like, no, he's been here. Like, there's a feeling in the air. One day, they caught him trying to abduct a girl from Eagle Rock just during the day, just pulled her into the car. Somebody called the police after they heard her scream, and they pulled over a matching vehicle. But Ramirez talked his way out of it, so they're just going to write him a ticket, I guess. When he heard over the cop's radio about the car being stolen, he bolted after drawing a pentagram on the car, of course. He escaped, and the car...
Give me a second! Just a minute!
I gotta get this wing down! He escaped, and the car sat in the police towing yard for days, and Carrillo and Salerno couldn't get access to see it because they had to, like, put in the proper paperwork, and the guys at the station were being like, no.
Bureaucracy.
Found within the car.
Police should have free reign to do whatever they want, to whoever they want.
Everybody should be Judge Dredd. So any DNA he left in the car, and there would have been DNA because he left in a hurry, was burned off by the sun. What they did find in there was a wallet.
Do you normally clean up your DNA before you leave a car? Take your time.
Spit shine. Yeah, well, you spit everywhere.
There's no DNA in spit.
We just found everything tastes like Skittles because we tasted it. He left a card in the car that he stole for a dentist appointment he was supposed to have.
Good.
Yeah.
Getting his life together.
But all they learned from that was there was a guy named Rick, along with a fake last name, and he had very bad teeth. So they kind of had him, but not enough to, like...
Does he always... that was him.
Yeah.
I was thinking he had some friend named Rick that had bad teeth also.
He was part of the same support group. Rick with bad teeth room. Hi, I'm Rick with bad teeth. Hi, Rick with bad teeth. There are two other things that give his identity to the police. When he attacks one of the, I think the one in Diamond Bar, there's a kid working on a bike, notices a strange car driving around there, like an orange car. Ramirez doesn't notice this kid working on this bike. A few days later, after the murder is covered, the kid let the police know, and they found that car in a parking lot. Usually, Ramirez is really good for wiping for prints, but this time he left a single fingerprint on a rear view mirror. Boom, one. After the murder of Peter Pan in San Francisco, Merced, the police released information and description.
I don't know why this wasn't a national story.
Peter Pan dead.
Not just dead. He never grew up.
This cannot go in the episode.
Come on, his name's Peter Pan.
I read it and I thought, oh, Daniel's gonna laugh. Oh boy, here it is. The police released information.
Tinkerbell calls foul play.
Hook brought in for questioning.
Shmi won't talk.
After the murder and robbery of Peter Pan and Merced, the police released information and description of the jewelry that was stolen, and a man whose mother-in-law has dealings with the Ramirez in Arizona has come forward and describes the man he knows as Rick. Through different contacts, they come to different sources and eventually landed with the man in Echo Park who had bought all the stolen goods from Ramirez. Many of the times they had bloodstains on them. Although they don't know each other's name, he would be able to point out Ramirez's face along with the stolen items, so this was another thing that was going to come in. This, along with the first thing, a man from the Greyhound station got his daughter to call in and report that he knew this guy who looked like the police sketch.
Why'd he make his daughter do it?
Because he was a wimp. This guy that he described bought drugs at the Greyhound station and also worshipped Satan and would bring it up all the time, which must have been annoying. If he's making people swear on Satan, he seems really annoying. He didn't know his name, but he knew he was involved in another situation in which he stole a car and crashed into a different Greyhound station. So from that, they got the name Richard Ramirez, and boom, they had him. So now they just have to catch him, though. So, August 30th, 1985, either the idiot's luck ran out or Satan got bored of his antics. He's like, let's stir things up a bit. Ramirez comes back to LA from Tustin by the way of Greyhound.
Oh no, I'm going to Tustin in a few weeks.
Oh, well, look out.
I'm taking a Greyhound.
I'm gonna be at the station. My name's Richard Ramirez.
Oh no, my teeth!
What's gonna happen?
Don't look at my teeth!
Don't look at my teeth! My feet are growing right now. There's been no way for him to know on this trip that the police have ID'd him from fingerprints, and witnesses from the Greyhound terminal have come forward. However, cops are waiting at the departing area of LA's terminal, and he's arriving. So he slips by unnoticed, although he notices them. Then, outside of downtown, some women working at a fruit stand see him and start saying El Maton, which means thug or killer. I heard also El Matador, which just means killer.
How'd they know who he was?
The police sketch. So he's going around and everything. And
Those teeth.
He probably had a photo of him some point. Oh, I feel bad for people with bad teeth during that era. Him! No, I need braces. I'm sorry, I just do braces. So women on the street are like, oh, it's him. That's him. And he doesn't know what's happening. He can't figure it out. Like, why are people looking at me? I mean, you've killed people, but like,
what did I do?
Yeah, I'm sure like, wait, how'd you figure it out? So he walks over to a store nearby and looks at the Spanish language newspaper La Opinión. And sure enough, the news conference discussing his name and a police sketch were on the front page. By this time, owners of the store had called the police and he could already hear the sirens. So he books it, but not towards his familiar grounds of downtown LA. He crosses the bridge of LA River and enters to East LA.
Oh no.
Rookie mistake.
Vigilante justice kicks in.
So, new plan. He wants to steal a car and drive to Mexico, as everybody who commits a crime does. A little derivative, but whatever.
We've all been there.
But not only is he walking suspiciously with suspicious intentions, but everyone who lives in LA who's been afraid of this guy knows him, and he's walking suspiciously and also happens to look like the Night Stalker. Spoiler, it is the Night Stalker. These 3 teenage boys start following him and shouting out, call the police, we have him, call the police. And he tries to scare them away. He's like, I have a gun! Get away from me, I have a gun! But he didn't pull it out. So they were calling out to the neighbors and everything. And then the helicopter in the area starts getting closer and closer, trying to look for, So he just books it. He starts going through yards and stuff. So he sees a woman sitting alone in a car and he approaches her in a panic saying, my mother died, I need your car. And she's like, no, I don't care. You're not taking my car. So he tries to pull her out and threaten her saying he had a gun. But there was too much ruckus. So the girl's boyfriend came out along with some other guys and chased him away. They looked at each other like he saw these men approaching him and they looked at him like, oh, it's a Night Stalker. Everyone got scared to see this.
Hey, you. And it's Biff. Hey, you.
Hey, you.
Get your damn hands off her.
This was the basis of Back to the Future, but it was much darker.
Same year. Well, unless you're talking about 95.
He's running through backyards and stuff trying to get away. But in East LA, in this area, all the houses are in such close proximity to each other. There's no really to get away and make a good move. You were like, everything you do is in someone's
You're
yard.
being watched.
Yeah, exactly. He's running around and people are seeing him hop walls and try to get away. And everyone's screaming. Like, you like follow him for the trail of screaming. And remember, it is the hottest summer on record. So he is just burning up, sweating his stupid satanic.
Why didn't someone just shoot him?
Why do you assume people in East LA have guns?
Before I said that, I was like, this might sound a little racist. Not even illegally. I mean, if everyone's seeing him, somebody must have had a gun.
The sale of guns did go up this summer.
Yeah.
But you don't know he's coming. It's not like you're sitting there on a rocking chair with like,
I would be.
Why they wouldn't, I don't know.
So I spend every summer.
So he lands himself on Hubbard Street, in particular the 3700 block of Hubbard, right off of Indiana near Whittier Boulevard. So he ends up in the backyard of a man named Richard Munoz. Munoz happened to be in his backyard cooking up some burgers when a dude who looks like the Night Stalker hops a wall. So he starts whacking Ramirez with an iron spatula. So Ramirez bails and hops the wall into Facino Piñon's wall, who was a pretty tough guy. Now, Piñon was working on the transmission to his daughter's Mustang, so the car was sitting with the engine on, jacked up, sitting on boxes. So Ramirez is like, dream come true, here's the Mustang. And so Ramirez jumps in the car and tries to get away, but not before Facino can come back and try to stop him. He grabs him basically by the neck and tries to pull him out, and it's not. So they grapple as the car is moving, but like at a slow level. The car ends up crashing into the chimney of the house and it stalls. Once again, Ramirez bolts, already
This is ridiculous.
This is a cartoon sketch.
I imagine like the whole, like just gathering, like the whole town is following him at this point.
Yeah, so he's running down Hubbard Street, just sweating, just can barely make it. So a woman sees him and is trying to get into her car real fast, and he gets to her and tries to take the keys away to escape, but not before her neighbor, Jose Burgon, and his 2 sons approach him, followed by the woman's husband, Manuel de la Torre, and he runs up to him with a metal bar and cracks it at the back of Richard Ramirez's head, which when I read that word, I'm like, oh, that's so good.
His teeth straightened out.
So he hits him behind the head really hard. Once again, manages to get away from that all.
What?
And he's running down the street, but he's just dizzy and he's hot and sweaty.
Did the metal bar have the wrong sort of gunpowder in it?
Activated. Oh man, I should have watched this thing. He's just stumbling down Hubbard Street, dizzy and sweaty. And
Where are the police?
on their way.
Okay.
Relax. What, you don't like an angry mob?
I do, but I want this to be done right.
By the book! So everyone on the street, it's like the angry mob is following him now, and everyone's like, I'm not there, that's him. And he's like turning around and being defiant, like hissing at them and sticking his tongue out. And with the sign of the cross and stuff. So De La Torre and the Burguan boys catch up to him, and they give him the old metal bar special again, right to the head, and knock him down to the ground. And they just stood there. That's a Night Stalker, bled at their feet, begging for death until the LAPD
No,
and Sheriff's
you don't get it.
Yeah, you're not going to get it. Exactly. Until Sheriff's Department and LAPD came up to pick up the trash.
Way to go, LAPD.
Well,
and then they beat the guys that were hitting Ramirez.
What'd you do to this poor guy? There are rumors, and it's not mentioned in the research, but there are rumors I've heard many times before that when the cops came for him, he begged to be taken away from the angry mob that had beaten him. I really hope that's true.
Yeah.
I don't know if that is, but I really hope that is. They were later given awards by the city and still are
really?
heroes
Good.
for catching the Night Stalker. He was eventually charged with 13 murders and 31 other felonies related to his killing spree. November 7th of 89, he received 19 death sentences, to which he responded, "No big deal. Death always comes with the territory. I'll see you in Disneyland."
What?
Yeah. He remained a loyal servant to Satan, of course. This pleases Satan. There's a famous photo of him holding up his hand when he's in court and has a pentagram drawn on it. Dweeb.
Yeah, he's stupid.
Following sentencing, Ramirez was transferred to death row at San Quentin State Prison, but not before bagging a couple of ghoulish girls along the way.
Yeah, everyone gets them.
There's another thing that the Night Stalkers were known for, and that's for having a really strong female fan base after he was caught. Mothers, lock up your daughters. Really, though. They were sick. Lock them up before we do. One of the jurors, Cynthia Hayden, fell for him when he was on the stand and became a private investigator just to try to prove that he was innocent. Another woman, Laurel Kendall, was a former fashion model turned professional dominatrix in New York, wrote to Ramirez that she fantasized about having sex with him in his prison cell. Other women wanted to have sex with him in their coffin. Other women wanted to have sex with him in a cemetery with the gravestone knocked over and blood of the victims all over. It was just gross. But the biggest fan was a woman named Doreen Loy, who was probably the most persistent of his little creeps. She was a freelance magazine editor, and she thought he was just so attractive. They were married in the main visiting area of San Quentin in 1996. She doesn't look anything like what you'd expect a woman who marries a man she knows to be a serial killer to look like. She looks like everyone's Aunt Mabel. Also, an interesting story, while he was locked up before he was in San Quentin, when he was still in Allen County Jail, Richard Ramirez had a big old fanboy moment when he saw Sean Penn in the same jail, who was in jail for reckless driving and fighting with an extra on the set of a movie. When he was there, he wrote him a fan letter that read, "Hey Sean, stay tough and hit him again. Richard Ramirez, 666.
Oh, God.
To which Penn replied, "You know, Richard, it's impossible to be incarcerated and not feel a certain kinship with your fellow inmates. Well, Richard, I've done the impossible. I feel absolutely no kinship with you. And I hope gas descends upon you before sanity does. You know? Good for you, Sean Penn."
His greatest role.
Richard Ramirez died in June of 2013.
Oh my God, wow.
Yeah,
He really lasted.
B-cell.
June of 2013. Remember June of 2013. It's coming up again.
He dies from B-cell lymphoma, complications from that. Many think it's unfair that such a savage psychopath got to live his life while many other innocent people were cut short. But you know, if you had done the research, Richard Ramirez never wanted to live past being caught, and the idea of rotting in prison made him sick. To know he died in jail.
Well, it gave him cancer.
To know he died in jail brings a big smile to my face. Yeah. That's the Night Stalker.
I wish he could die again.
Just for all of us to watch. It's the Night Stalker.
Well, I will never, ever be here during the summer again.
Oh, yeah. No, it can be boiling hot. I'm like, keep the window.
Yeah, please.
No doggy doors.
Sorry, doggy. You gotta stay inside.